Yeah, if you didn't hear, we got the community policing grant yesterday for 7 officers, and we're very excited for that. It was a very competitive process, and only very few departments get selected for this. And in addition, it's Community Policing Week, and that's a big focus of the direction that I want to go, and we're trying to bring the department back to more community-oriented policing. We've been working hard to highlight a lot of the good things that happen within this department over the last 8 or 9 months, and what we've seen is we've had an increase in applicants, and we haven't had a problem filling the vacancies that we have. In years past, that's been an issue, and I believe part of that is the focus on, our focus on community policing. So with this grant comes 7 police officers, 1 will be a sergeant, and 6 patrol officers. And the idea is, and the grant was written to focus on the Broadway corridor, which was a department focus back in the 90s, and they had substantial gains made back then and also won some national awards for their efforts down there. But the problem is that the efforts weren't sustained. So we're going to take another bite at this apple and assign these officers down in the Broadway corridor area, focusing on problem locations. Many of them revolve around some of the motels. The issues that we see are issues with human trafficking, illegal drug use, drug sales, disturbances, assaults, along with the issues of homelessness and mental health. So this isn't a zero tolerance program. Instead, it focuses a lot on getting to the root of the issue. Some of the issues are lack of drug treatment, chemical abuse treatment, as well as our need to really help with the human trafficking issues that the city faces. I also know the impact that officers can have when they're in an area. These officers will be primarily on foot and bike patrol. They will not be in a car very often. They're going to be a very visible presence in that neighborhood. And I'm really excited to see the difference that we're going to make. I think it's going to be substantial. It's going to have an economic benefit to the neighborhood. And you'll see when we can assign officers to a specific area and have the proper staffing to do community policing, you're going to see a difference. So the grant will begin January 1st. Obviously, we'll have to hire the officers and get them trained in. So in the springtime, look for these 7 additional staff members in the Broadway corridor area. Okay?
As you mentioned, you guys have taken a bite at that apple before. Can you explain what the successes were and what you're hoping this will be this time around?
Yeah, so in the 90s, everything that I hear about was, a lot of the similar issues with crime and disorder, problem locations. And the issue is sustaining it, right? So we need to put efforts into place to sustain our gains. And that may be ensuring that we always have proper police staffing down there. Because of economic reasons, our staffing numbers have gone down, and that has hurt our abilities to do community policing. You cannot do community policing when you're just responding to 911 calls. So this grant will really give us dedicated staff that can focus on the issues there and not chase their tail by answering 911 calls.
Can you tell us the boundaries for the area that's going to be?
Yeah, well, so they're pretty much focusing in the commercial area of Broadway from, what streets would they be, Nikki? We haven't really set them up yet, but it'll be addressed primarily around where the calls are and where the issues are focused, right? So we're going to put cops on the dots, so to speak, where we have the issues. That's where they'll be focusing. And obviously a big part of this is going to be data driven. So we will be focusing on regular review of our efforts. Now I'll tell you this year we started tracking calls for service by address. And since we just started tracking that, probably in March or April, we've seen a significant decline in the calls for service to some of the motels and problem locations. So just that effort has already made a difference. But yeah, it'll be location driven.
People might hear the number of extra officers, you said 7, and think, well, what's that going to do? That's not going to make a big difference. Talk about just how big of an impact 7 officers, additional officers, can have on an area.
Yeah, well, so we have a defined, clear area. We know when they're not chasing those 911 calls, when they have the time dedicated to being proactive and working on these issues. I mean, look at the success that the HOT team has had on helping us address homeless issues. So when we have those dedicated officers that are focusing on where the problems are, those problem locations, we know they can make a difference. I mean, and we see it time and time again. When you can dedicate an officer to working on problems, they're successful. And the results are often well beyond just reducing crime, and it goes into the areas of economic development and success as well.
Tell us again your reaction to just hearing that you guys got this grant and knowing that the other agency that got it got a lesser number than you guys did. It's a big number.
Yeah, well, it's great because, like I said, I don't know how many people apply, how many agencies apply, but it's definitely in the hundreds, if not thousands. So for us to get this grant I think it speaks volumes of our grant proposal and the effort that we intend to make here. So we are very excited.
With that money, I assume then you'll be able to, because you're going to need additional body cams, right?
Correct.
So that'll help take care of that.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't cover equipment, but the 7 cameras, we'll figure out where that's going to come from. It's when you start talking dozens and dozens of cameras, that's where it gets expensive. Yeah.
So are we talking south corridor or north corridor?
It'll be a little bit of both. Yeah. So one of the things that we've seen, North had made a concerted effort earlier this year to focus on these hot spots, and we've seen it kind of pushed a little bit south, and in turn the south numbers are going up. So some of this may push problems outside of that boundary, which we're going to continue to push no matter where they go, and hopefully push the problems right out of the city.